You're listening to Being Built. I'm Aaron Davis, founder of Reckless Tech, executive search and tech staffing firm. And I'm here with Brandon Baird.
Yes.
And you're the founder of Flightcontrol.
Yes, co-founder and CEO of Flightcontrol.
Nice. So tell me a little bit about Flightcontrol.
You know, traditional status quo for software developers is to deploy an application to either AWS, where you have to basically do everything yourself. You have to understand AWS and all the intricacies of it. Or you can use a platform as a service like Heroku or something like that, which, abstracts AWS and simplifies it.
Okay.
But you sacrifice a lot of control. You sort of have this trade-off of easy to use or full control. And we were like, well, why can't we have the good developer experience on your own AWS account? And so you can really get the good developer experience and the full control all together.
Yeah, so one of the questions I was going to ask you is why the name Flightcontrol, but I'm starting to get it. I think I figured out somewhere in the profile that you were a flight fan as well.
Yes, I am a pilot.
Yeah, is that
Yes.
right? How'd you get into that?
I flew out of the womb.
Oh, is that right?
Ever since I was a kid, just always loved aviation and flying, and started training when I was 15, got my pilot's license at 17, and been flying mostly ever since.
So this idea of being able to control your environment as you're setting it up,
Yes,
kind of just paired well with the organization that you built.
Exactly.
Let's talk about you then for a little bit. Then I kind of want to talk a little bit more about Flightcontrol. What's your background? What were your beginnings career-wise?
My original plan was to become a corporate pilot, but, it takes a lot of training and time to build up your flying hours to get there. And I was like, well, I'll be an engineer to earn some money, and then I can switch to flying career.
Right. Do the grind in the cube and then do the fun stuff.
So I went to college for electrical engineering because my dad was an electrical engineer. I was like, okay, seems interesting. And in the process of doing that degree over here at Wright State, I took a class on software as you're supposed to do. And I was like, whoa, no, this is actually fun.
Yeah.
And so I got a job as an intern doing software engineering. And then been doing software ever since. So double E degree, but hardly ever use it.
Yeah, I used to work for a double E who became a software guy. Right?
It's very typical, yes.
Yeah.
And actually, my co-founder also has an electrical engineering degree and is in software.
Software kind of ate up the world for a while there, right? It's kind of still doing that. So tell me about your software path. Then what happened?
So I worked at Trimble Navigation for about 5 years in the Spectra Precision Tools division. Okay. So it's construction lasers, construction tools for, laser levels and vertical lines and things like that. And so I was embedded, programming microchips with C language, controlling those motors and lasers and button presses. Got kind of bored of that. I was wanting to do more creative, more visual stuff. I also had found Sparkbox, which is an agency.
Yeah,
started here in Dayton. And I was seeing them.
In the game, yeah, they do some really cool stuff.
So I was seeing them, and they're really cool office and ping pong tables. And I'm just I got to get in this JavaScript world.
Yeah, those guys are all about kind of design systems and whatever else, right?
I kind of had my eyes set on that. Ended up switching to another company in Minneapolis, doing similar embedded stuff, but then took a boot camp to learn Ruby on Rails. And that was really what taught me the foundation of web programming and a little bit of JavaScript, but mostly Ruby. Mm-hmm. But then I was able to go on and teach myself JavaScript and eventually React.
Yeah, all that JavaScript stuff is hot these days.
Yeah.
Who's that Ruby shop here locally? Little Lines. I think they were kind of hot for a while. They were Ruby. They were a little software shop that when I was in the services business for a little while, we ran into them a couple of times. And that's all they did was Ruby on Rails. Tell me about the beginnings then of Flightcontrol. How'd that come to be?
I'd really been working towards having my own company for 7-8 years.
Okay.
That, I read a book called Getting Real by the Basecamp folks.
Oh, yeah. I've read one of their books.
Yeah. And so Getting Real was their very first book, a very small book around just how to be normal people at work, without all the bureaucracy and crazy stuff. And that really have me how that even just a small an individual or a small team could have a software company that could make good money and just have a lot of fun in the process. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, I could do this. So I was working towards that. I ended up doing freelance consulting for about 4 years. So that was a really good intermediate step that
Yeah, you learn how to send an invoice, right?
Yes, gave me more experience with business stuff. Gave me more flexibility. I'm able to earn more money, and then I'll have more flexibility in my time to like maybe not work on a contract for a month or something and work on like a side project or whatever.
A lot of would-be business people are so intimidated by being able to create a logo, organize an LLC, send an invoice, like the business stuff. I have an MBA, right? And everybody thinks that like drug dealers know more about business than MBAs do. It's like, just get people to give you money. Exactly. Buy a pair of shoes for $80, sell it for $100. That's it. That's all it is, right?
I never had a logo, never had a website.
It doesn't matter. Like, get people to give you money. That's it. Yep. Buy something for a little money, sell it for a lot. And even if that's just skills, right? Yes. Every time somebody's like, oh, can you tell me how to do my business stuff? No, there's nothing to it. It's nothing.
Yeah. I recommend the Personal MBA. It's a book.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, that's like, the whole idea is like it's an MBA and just, one book. Teaches you all like the actual stuff you need to know for business.
Yeah.
Just like you're saying, like make money, make a profit.
I don't even think it's a page. I don't even think it's a paragraph. It's literally a sentence. Get people to give you money. Like, that's it. I really think that's an MBA.
Without being a scam.
Right, that's it. like, you give them something of value, they give you money. That's really it. And I think people tend to overthink it, right? And then you just increment from there. You know what I mean? It's literally like lemonade stand, right? And then you add the lemon wedge, and then you add the umbrella, and then you add right? Like that's all it is. Next thing you know, you're the banana stand, right? Then you dip it in chocolate. That's cool. That's a really good story, though. I like those Basecamp guys for that reason.
Yeah.
They've really kind of pared down like business out of it doesn't need to be the Jack Welch G, Uber, Six Sigma, this and that.
Just like have a business that you enjoy. Maybe it's big, maybe it's not. Doesn't matter as long as you're having a good time and everyone's enjoying it. Yeah, I was consulting, freelancing, and then I was working with JavaScript, but I really missed the developer experience of Ruby on Rails. And I was like, we really need a Ruby on Rails for JavaScript and React. That eventually created Blitz.js. The idea at this time was to be a Ruby on Rails for JavaScript. Ruby on Rails is a batteries included framework that has everything you need out of the box. So authentication, a database, sending emails, all these sort of things that you need to just build a web application, has it all included. But JavaScript is very DIY.
Okay.
And it's like millions of these individual node modules that you assemble together. And so every app is like bespoke, right?
It's like these microphones I just bought.
Yeah.
Now I need the mixer. I need the headphones. Yes. I need
and there's a million options for each one. You got to go research it and figure it out. And then you got to connect them together.
That's right.
And maybe you need some adapters or whatever. Yeah. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, I need something that's more batteries included. Yeah. And so that's why I created Blitz. It really like head off, really like struck a nerve. Launched it on Twitter, kind of went viral. And so now it's like tons of people know about it. But the adoption hasn't been there because JavaScript developers they love doing their own thing too much.
Is that right? Okay.
So
they want to buy their own chords. Yes. Right? They want to customize their own experience.
So it has like 12 or 13,000 GitHub stars. 12 or 13,000 GitHub stars.
Okay. Yeah.
It's got some traction, but that was really though the thing that launched my career and got me more notoriety on Twitter and speaking at conferences and
then that gave you a foundation, a base, then to kind of do what was next.
And so it was a year after starting Blitz, I think, that I started thinking about Flightcontrol and how that would look. Ended up meeting my co-founder and then, really getting that started. And so we got a lot of our first users from Blitz community and we still get users from that. And so it was a really good platform, both for just awareness of the product, also credibility, because like people had like knew me. And so even though it's early and it's like managing your production infrastructure, that requires a lot of trust. And so that definitely like really helped to get Flightcontrol off the ground.
All right, so you met your co-founder. Tell me a little bit about your co-founder.
He's amazing. He's my CTO.
Okay.
Met him through an online entrepreneur community called Mega Maker.
Oh, okay.
Relatively small community. And so we knew of each other on there for a couple of years. Had seen each other on Twitter or whatever, but never talked one-on-one like didn't actually know each other. One day when I was like deciding about the business ideas, what was I going to do? Like one day I decided, okay, flight control is it. This is what I'm going to do. The very next day, he messages me on Twitter out of the blue and is like, hey, I'm thinking about building this deploy to AWS thing. Do you want to partner on it? It's like exactly the thing that I was just decided I was going to build.
Really?
And I'm like I had been hinting at it on Twitter, kind of, but like not directly. And I was just like, okay, what? Like, what is this? Who is this guy? I don't know who he is. I have like really high standard for who a co-founder would be because it's like getting married. But I was like, we have to talk. So talked and ended up just really hitting it off. And we're just super aligned on core values, company vision, product vision, and I guess best friend.
Like I get a little energy just kind of hearing that. Like that is exciting. Sometimes the sum is greater than the parts, right?
I say this, but maybe I'll change my mind later. But I don't think I'll ever be a solo founder again, or try to do that. Like I've done some small stuff in the past, tried the solo route.
It's one of my greatest regrets, actually.
Is what?
Yeah, attempting to be a solo founder. When I look back at one of my greatest failures, I attribute a lot of that failure to attempting to be a founder as a.
It's just so tough.
Yeah,
and it's amazing to have someone else there that like. While I'm here recording a podcast, he's over there doing actual work.
Yeah, trying to kind of be on an island or whatever and just swimming in your own thoughts. It's drowning. All right. You mentioned similar core values, right? Like, what did you guys align on? And not just your vision, but like those kind of values or whatever. That's really curious to me.
Yeah. I mean, we just both have really high standards for integrity and like how we want to treat people, really like valuing people and treating them right. Internal, like employees. Also our customers, and so like customer support is something we're just value really well, something we're known for. Just like aligned around wanting to like do something meaningful in the world, and have an impact.
Tell me about the vision you guys have.
I mean, we want to IPO.
Yeah,
someday. Yeah. Like we want to like really build this massive company that we would actually want to work for. I've spent so much of my career in these boring, awful companies. It's just like grinding you to the bone and just like nickel and diming you, and it's just like it's not fun. You don't have this creative freedom, and you only have like clamp down on like how much vacation you can take. It's just like hard to enjoy life. And so we're like, we want to build a company that we would love to be a part of. We really try to give people creative freedom. Just we have like unlimited vacation, minimum 1 month vacation per year. Things like this.
Get your ass out of the building, right?
Yeah. Make sure you have a life outside of work.
Do you even have a building? I guess that's not what it's about these days. Yeah. Now it's more like get offline, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Stop working. Go do something fun, right? Do something refreshing. You've been building this thing, right? So tell me how that's going.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
Especially right now, we're in the middle rebuilding the entire web portion of it, the dashboard part of it. Because we launched about a year and a half ago. Beginning of last year. What we've had so far has worked really well. It got us to this point. It's got us, a lot of paying customers, and the underlying systems, the deployment and infrastructure are all super solid. But the UI has only been designed by me, an engineer. It has much to be desired.
Okay.
And it still kind of feels like a prototype or things in some ways. And so we're losing some potential deals on it because people are like, I don't know if I can trust this. I'm not sure if it's finished. And so we started working with a design agency out of Berlin last December. And so they did our branding. So we've got a logo this year. They've done all new marketing website and like brand identity and stuff. This website is still to be launched. And then also redesigned their entire dashboard. So all new UI, UX. And it's just so much better than what we have. But it's a ton of work to rebuild this. Partly because we're adding a ton of new features in the process. A lot of the critical things that are really highly requested, like cost visibility of your AWS stuff, which is a big pain point. Like it's just kind of a black box. Like I've got some servers running, but like how much is it costing me? And I get a bill and it's like, oh no. And so we're just like having that surface right in a dashboard of like, you can see how much each service is costing you, the environment, the entire project.
I want to be able to hover over things and see it, see dollars and cents and really kind of understand at an increment and a bit level, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What's the hard part about that?
The hard part is just all of the work. we're 2 or 2.5 months into it, and probably have another like at least a month left.
Is there enough data? Like, are you able to get the right data for each customer in order to give them accurate?
Yeah. Okay. So AWS, I mean, one of the good things about them is they have API access for almost everything.
You can deliver. So you can deliver them the right information.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of just getting it in front of their face in the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. The hard part is just managing the complexity of AWS. The good thing is it's stable. They don't change APIs. It is a lot of complexity to wrangle.
Well, part of you making it simple is managing that complexity for your customer.
Exactly.
That's the whole beauty of what you're doing, right?
Yep.
So as you're working through this big UI redesign, you're also adding a lot of features. How have you determined which features to prioritize? Are you releasing them in increments? Are you building them a little bit at a time? Or are you putting together a big batch of features all at once? Or how are you going about that?
So the first part of the things that we're adding is feature parity in the UI. So we have 2 ways that you can configure a project. We have what you call infrastructure as code, where you have what we call a flightcontrol.json file in your code that can manage all of the configuration for your project. The other way is to configure it through our dashboard, where you're like clicking a form field and so forth. But that UI has not had feature parity with the flightcontrol.json just because it was a lot of work. We were just shipping stuff fast. Like we needed to see if people were even going to use the product, right? Mm-hmm. But now we've established that yes, like this is, people want this, people are paying for it. And so now we're bringing the UI up to feature parity. So that right there is just a lot of complexity. So a lot of complex form fields and things that we have to build just to support that. And then, so the other part of the new features are things like the cost visibility, metrics like CPU and memory graphs for your servers directly in the dashboard. And these are all things that people were highly requesting. So for example, like the CPU and memory, they weren't requesting it that much, but repeatedly they would contact support and they're like, hey, something's not working. Like my server is like really slow or whatever. And then we go look at their CPU and memory charts and it's just maxed out. You just need to increase your server size. Clearly they need that information in front of them where they can see it when they're like logging in, trying to figure out what's going on. We're doing a lot to just improve the user experience of not only the initial infrastructure setup, but the ongoing day-to-day monitoring it. If something's going wrong, how do I troubleshoot that?
Yeah, so you're observing demand from kind of 3 different ways. What you hear from customers in terms of tickets and support, what kind of failings or problems that they're running into as they're using the product, and then also kind of, what they're communicating to you, what they're just saying, like, hey, could you do this next?
Right.
Like these are features we'd like you to add.
And then there's the stuff that we know that they're going to want that they may or may not be requesting. So you have that side of like,
where do you get that?
The innovation side where it's like, hey, we know that like this will be really good and we need to build it.
That's that Henry Ford stuff. Like, yeah, you're asking me for a faster horse, but I know better.
Yeah.
That's like, that big bet kind of stuff, right?
We launched a year and a half ago. We've been building almost since the start, almost 2 years. And until now, we've been just building foundations, like just the essential features, the things that the groundwork that you have to have even to choose us over something else, getting this foundational design in place. We haven't done really any innovation yet, aside from the initial sort of idea. So now, once we finish this rebuild, we're going to be able to start doing more innovative stuff. Like one of the big things that's next is just super fast builds. So whenever you build the software, you have to build it and then deploy it. And right now, builds for projects take, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the size. Then we want to get those under a minute.
How's that compare to alternatives?
5 to 15 minutes is pretty typical. So we're not necessarily slower, and we're building on top of one of the AWS services called Code Build, which it's really one of the worst AWS services.
Is it?
So yeah, it's some of their, like AWS has, 200 services, and most of them are just trash.
Really?
Or there's many of them are, but then there's some that are just like world class.
So why'd you pick the worst one?
It's their only solution for this sort of CI build system. So it's the only option. Made sense to start with it. But what we're going to do next is build something very custom that will have much better caching and performance.
You just have to do a little bit more color coding for that. That's you were trying to skip that in the first iteration.
Yeah. In the beginning, you have to prove out. You're trying to prove out the market. Like, is this even the right product for the right customers?
My first couple of podcasts I recorded on a phone.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. I wasn't gonna buy stuff. Right. Yeah. Why bother? This new UI and this kind of batch of features that you're working on. You said you're gonna be pushing those out in the next month or so. You said.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll hang that up.
Hidden complexity. The things that like, oh, we think like this is all that's left, or these features that, oh, we think it'll take a day or 2 days to build this thing. It ends up taking a week. I mean, it's part of the course for software development. But
you went through the Y Combinator program.
Yes,
I'm curious about that. What was that experience like?
Y Combinator, for those that don't know, is a startup accelerator based out of Silicon Valley. It's the most popular, most prestigious one in the world. Airbnb, DoorDash, Dropbox, etc. have all gone through there. And they give you funding. So these days it's $500,000 in funding and a 3-month sort of boot camp / training program. They take about, I think it's maybe 150 companies in a batch. And that's like 1% of the applications that they get. So it's very hard to get in.
Yeah, congrats on making that cut.
Thanks.
That's a big deal.
So, this is 2 years ago. We were trying to raise funding. This was before Y Combinator was in the picture. We were trying to raise venture capital funding because my co-founder and I didn't have savings that we could just like waste on this. And I was also maintaining Blitz.js. And so I really needed money to pay someone else to maintain that while I started focusing on the new thing. And we spent like 3 months trying to raise funding from investors and just got nowhere. Like, it was just one of the most brutal periods of the company. And somewhere in the tail end, we applied to YC, Y Combinator, as like a sort of, okay, whatever. Like, I don't expect anything, but just put it in there. And then one day we got an email saying, hey, we want you to interview it was like 2 days later. So they invite you to a 10-minute interview. If they like your application, they'll invite you to a 10-minute interview. You go, you show up, and it's just rapid fire questions, 10 minutes, and then you're done. And you wait for the rest of the day to see if you're going to get a phone call or an email.
One's a yes, one's a no?
Yes. Email's a no. You get a phone call, it's a yes.
Okay.
And so it's like, pins and needles all day, 10 p.m. You get a phone call from like this unknown number from New York. I'm like, maybe this is it. I don't know.
Sounds like some kind of reality TV show.
And it's the YC partner being like, hey, we'd love to have you join. And so that was a real thrill.
So after that whole American Idol kind of like scene that you just painted there, then what happened? What was the whole boot camp thing like?
I think it was 2 or 3 months after that acceptance to when the batch started, because we were one of the earliest ones to get accepted in. So they have a weekly plan. They basically have a calendar for you about what you should be focusing on each week, what content that you should be reading out of their library of content. And so they have tons of helpful resources on building a company, building a product, talking to users, raising funding. You also meet with your partners there, the Y Combinator partners. You meet with them every week, and really as often as you need to get their one-on-one advice for what you should be doing. And then they ask you to set a goal for the end of the 3 months about where you want to be, typically a revenue target. And so they ask you where you want to be, and then they try to help hold you accountable to that on a weekly basis. So you have your goal, and then you back that out to be like, where do you need to be every week?
If you're going to hit that, then at 2 months you should be here, and at 1 month you should be here, and at 3 weeks you should be there, 2 weeks you should be there. How'd you do?
Terrible.
Really?
Missed it by a mile. But
really?
Some companies far surpass it. But we ended up having 11 paying companies at the end of it, but nowhere near the revenue target. But
stars, you hit the moon. Right?
But it was really, I think it was good progress for us. And still we have relatively low annual contract value for our customers, just because of the market that we're in. It's a relatively low cost product, and we can't charge a premium on it without premium features, which we don't have yet. Otherwise, they're not going to use us. They're going to use
right. You're not a big deal product. You're a volume product.
Yeah. And eventually we'll be moving into enterprise sales, and then we'll have larger accounts that we can actually charge more for.
How do you go about winning deals now? Are you getting it through kind of word of mouth, your Twitter feed, just kind of connections through friends?
Basically all inbound, mostly organic because of my Twitter, Blitz.js, and the awareness around that. me attending conferences and speaking at conferences, and some word of mouth. So we've done very little traditional marketing or sales or anything. But now we're working to actually build a more repeatable growth engine for the rest of the year.
It's all just product-driven sales, huh?
Mostly, yeah. We're doing the PLG, product-led growth motion, which is the bottoms up, the word of mouth. And so we really need that, but then also layer in like the sales machine. Mm-hmm. And so, you have both.
Somebody on Twitter the other day was talking about kind of starting with the marketing and then kind of figuring out who's buying the idea. And then once you have people bought into the idea, then go build the product, right? And so there's different ways to go about it. Some people build the product and you get a following where people watch you build the product, and then you go out and start marketing and selling and so on. But there's all kinds of ways to go about it. Obviously, you're taking that route. And then you go out and say, hey, look what we've got. Look at these goods and services, right?
Yes.
I think there's wisdom in both.
Every path is like unique. I think it's a mistake to try to copy someone else's path.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that's the hard thing. Like, being a founder is you're blazing your own trail. Like, you can take inspiration from other companies, other paths, whatever, but ultimately you have to do what makes sense for you and your team and your market.
We were talking earlier about the MBA. One of the things that I learned in Wright State, as we talked endlessly about Google, the Google way, whatever other organization was hot at the time, as we were talking about this great organization, that great organization, all these companies that you're supposed to copy, is that the Google way, what I concluded was the Google way is the wrong way. Like, why are we talking about some organization that's got billions of dollars to burn that did it 10 years ago? It has nothing to do with what's going on right now. It has nothing to do with what any of us have at our disposal.
Exactly. Yes.
It's not the same product. It's not the same people. It's not the same market. It has nothing to do with anything we should be mimicking. So what I took from all of those learnings and all those white papers and all those lessons and whatever, what I keep saying to myself in a different way, what you just said is the Google way is the wrong way. Insert whatever company name you want to insert. Anyway, anybody's textbook is the wrong way. Your way is the right way. However that is. And then get people to give you money. That's my MBA. Whatever's in front of you. I guess he's not really a friend anymore. I haven't kept up with him forever, but he was kind of a mentor back in the day. I worked with him a long time ago. But he gave me this advice. He said, when in doubt, take the money. That's what he said. That was great business advice back in the day. That was my first MBA. It was a sales job that I did. I don't know. I think I was still rocking a flip phone back then. He's like, I don't know, Aaron. When in doubt, take the money. That was his business advice to me. You can't always figure everything out. There's not always a strategic answer to everything. Like sometimes you just go with your gut and you kind of figure it out afterward. Speaking of sales and marketing, as you're thinking about kind of a step ahead, obviously you're still focused very much on product. You've got a lot to do still with like UI, user experience, and kind of upgrading that element of your product. And I'm sure you don't want to take your eye off that. You want to make the catch before you pivot, right? No good leader's not thinking ahead, right? So as you think about marketing and sales and kind of getting into that whole thing, that's, I presume, kind of a new world for you.
It is.
I'm sure that's a little bit intimidating to think about.
I've done pretty well at guerrilla developer marketing on basically Twitter and conferences and things like this. It's how I got Blitz awareness up and Flightcontrol.
It helps that your customers are you. Like, know the persona, right?
Yes. But I've never had a traditional marketing or sales role to actually, know how to like build a machine and teams to like scale it up. So I've actually recently started working with a consultancy called Caliber Growth. Just literally started with them like 2 weeks ago. And so I'm getting sales training from them, building sales campaigns and outreach and stuff like this. So looks promising.
That's kind of in the research stage still, I guess. It's consulting with them and kind of figuring out what they're capable of and what they're offering. I've always found it really difficult to onboard new consultants in areas that I hadn't worked before, didn't really have a lot of experience in before. It's hard to know what to push back or question or, right? Like I've always found that really difficult. I've had to do that a lot. There's a lot of things that I don't know anything about. Yeah. In fact, almost everything. I don't know anything about most things, right? And I've held a couple of high positions a couple of times. So I've had to onboard consultants that do a lot of things I don't know anything about. That's tricky. You got any sage advice about that? You figured that out yet?
I think the thing that I'm really like really saying to myself is you have to face the thing you don't want to face. You have to, for a lot of technical founders, sales marketing is easy to just ignore, focus on building product, all this, whatever. But like, you have to face that lion in the face and like, handle it.
Yeah, run to the problem, not from the problem. You know what I have found to be helpful? I do keep kind of like a circle of friends of sorts that are good at different things. So I do have friends in the Rolodex, so to speak, that I will call and say, hey, I'm talking to these guys about finance and accounting stuff. They're saying this. Does this make sense? What should I question?
Yes.
And maybe they're not an expert exactly at that, but they at least know how to talk about it. And I found that to be helpful. Like, this guy's maybe he's a tax accountant guy or whatever. And this is kind of a finance problem, but he'll at least know how to speak to it. Where I'm like, I don't know finance and accounting really at all, right? They'll at least know how to speak to it. So having some really trusted, person, whatever.
I have a founder coach that I got, like, it was only a few months into the company. I was like, I need a coach. And that's just more, not really a business coach, but just a founder coach.
Okay.
More like an executive coach type of thing.
Yeah.
So she's been absolutely amazing. It's on just helping with me and my psychology, being a leader, manager, all of those sort of things. I have a couple like business advisors and then also a ton of investors. So we have a big venture capital VC investors, institutional investors who we meet with like every month or two, and they've been really, really helpful. And they actually made the connection to these agencies.
Nice.
Or this consultancy.
Good. So you got some betting going for you there.
Yeah.
And some folks you can say, hey, I'm hearing this. How would you?
Yes. And then we have lost track, but I think somewhere around 40 or 50 angel investors. Most of these people are pretty well known in the industry. A lot of them have been super helpful on various aspects. Like one was super helpful with negotiating enterprise contract for the first time, things like this.
Tell me about your team a little bit.
My co-founder, Mina, and I, two founders. We have 3 other full-time, forward. It's an influx, so losing track. There's 6 of us full-time, so 4 engineers besides Mina and I, and then 2 summer interns and 1 other engineer and consultant.
Yeah, so you got like the hit squad. Everybody's an engineer, huh?
Yeah, so far, yeah. So that's yeah, except for me. I stopped coding full-time a little over a year ago.
Yeah, but still you're an engineer by trade, right? So like you know the space.
Yeah.
Is that an asset to the organization that everybody's an engineer? And your customers all are too.
Everyone's an engineer. We're going to be needing to hire more like sales and marketing people that are not engineers. Being a dev tool and tool for software developers, I think it's important in order to have a lot of expertise. You need to understand your customers.
True.
Right.
Is everybody local or is your team spread out?
Yep, all remote. It's me and my brother. My brother works with us, so we're both here in Ohio.
Yeah.
Co-founders in Toronto.
Everybody else is everywhere?
Yeah. We have Mississippi, Cincinnati. Actually, then one of the interns is Cincinnati. Mississippi, Texas, Spain, and the other intern is in India.
So your get-togethers are all smiles and waves, right?
Well, so we don't pay for an office, and so instead we pay to fly everybody to a location twice a year.
That's cool.
At least twice a year.
That's cool.
For a week-long retreat.
Yeah.
So the last one was in Thailand.
Yeah.
Back in February, and one before that was Italy.
Dude. You know what sucks? Commuting. But you know what doesn't suck? Traveling. Traveling is cool. Commuting is not. You know what I mean? Well, that's a definite upgrade for sure. Good for you, man. Well done.
It's super important to get that in-person connection. You have to have it.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like trust is built that way. It's disarming. It makes conflicts are inevitable.
If you're actually doing something, you're gonna have conflict. If you're just chilling on the beach, maybe not be much conflict.
That's right. Mojitos, right? White Russians, whatever. If those are the decisions you're making, you're not gonna have conflict, right? But if you're like really trying to like push the limits or whatever and innovate, right? Like you're gonna have conflict. You should have some strain, some difficult decisions to make, right? So you'll have conflicts, and when you have conflicts, if you have trust, you've disarmed things because you've gotten to know each other and what matters to each other.
Yes.
You learned what each other's families are about and what each other's goals are about and hard things about each other's lives and stuff. Then you can kind of take the edge off a little bit. You hear about each other's lives a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
A hug or a handshake or whatever it is, right? It matters. It does matter.
It's also just all the open space outside of work. So like when we're at a retreat, it's like it's the meals, it's walking to and from places, whatever, that you have these conversations that you would never have on Zoom because you show up to a meeting and whatever, and like maybe you have some chit chat, and we have a weekly copy chat where we're just like talk about stuff. But there's tons of conversations that don't happen unless you're in person.
We all want to do important things with our business, but we do work because we need to make money. And like at the end of the day, work is a part of our lives, right? At the end of the day, we're all just like human beings on this rock floating through space, right? And so it's nice to just have had experiences with other human beings, right? And so just the humanity of it too, just to like chill with other human beings too, right? So too.
Yeah, I think it's super important to enjoy the journey. As founders, we probably have to be more intentional about that because it's easier just to be like more stressed about stuff or like whatever,
Right.
But I'm just super keen on enjoying the journey and not having this like destination. Oh, I'll be happy when this happens, when I have this much money, like whatever,
Right.
like it's always going to move. And so you have to be content and happy today with where you are.
Yeah.
Even if there's things you want to change, you have to accept that there's things that you want to change and I can be happy with where I am.
Contentment is tricky because contentment implies enough. Whereas as founders, you never really have enough, right? There's a friction with being content and being ambition, right? Because ambition in and of itself kind of implies that you always want more and you're never content, right? But gratitude, on the other hand, doesn't mean you ever have to have enough. But you don't ever have to feel like you don't have enough. You can be super grateful and never feel like you don't have enough. Right? Like you can still want more. Like you can be super grateful and feel like you have enough and feel like you don't have enough.
I love it.
You know what I mean? Like, so I found gratitude to be that thing that can live in both. Not having enough and having enough. Because I feel like I have enough and I don't have enough.
Yeah.
Right? I feel both.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like I have enough and I feel like I don't have enough. I don't feel like neither.
Right.
Which is contentment and ambition. I feel like I have both. I have enough.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, totally.
So I think gratitude is that kind of space where it's both. That's how I've resolved.
I should be interviewing you.
I don't know. Thank you. You did. You just did. We talked a little bit about kind of what you're trying to accomplish in the next couple of months and maybe the next kind of period with sales and marketing being a big objective. Where do you see Flightcontrol maybe in the next couple of years? Like, what's your vision as kind of like you get sales and marketing off the ground, kind of start to expand? Where do you see or kind of what's your goal or vision that you and your co-founder have for Flightcontrol over the next, year and a half, 2 year period?
We'll probably go to raise another round of funding next year at some point. And there's really two options for that. If we really kick off the growth engine this year, and if this rebuild and sort of like Flightcontrol 2.0, if you want to call it that, sort of causes an inflection point, then we could be ready for a Series B next year.
Okay.
Like with basically hitting around $1 million ARR, which is kind of the rule of thumb for Series A.
Okay.
Skip the A. Yeah, just got that one in my pocket. So yeah, around $1 million ARR is sort of the target for that Series A.
Okay.
But maybe it ends up that we have to take longer to just build out more stuff before we can sort of justify those higher contract values. And so maybe we raise a seed extension next year. Where seed extension for investors, it's Series A is, to back up a little bit, at seed stage, pre-seed or seed, when you go to investors, it's mostly about story, about founders and story. Does it seem plausible that you have a good story that you're going to be able to reach where you want to say you're going to go? Series B is almost entirely numbers driven. Like, do you have the actual revenue, the actual growth rates, the good churn number, low churn numbers, all those actual numbers, hardly any story at all. Series A is sort of in the middle between, maybe partly still story, but you also have to have actual numbers and solid revenue growth and whatever to back that up. If you're not to that point yet, then we can be more on the seed side, like a seed extension, where it's just like, hey, like we have some really good metrics so far, even though the revenue itself isn't like where we want it to be, and so we just need some more time to really get there.
So it kind of just depends on how the market responds to the product evolution,
and how long it takes us to really figure out the growth engine.
What will you do then to, the question was, what's your goal there? What's the challenge going to be? And then what are you going to do to face that challenge, or what's your plan to kind of mitigate that challenge? And I guess you kind of started to answer that question already, which is, I guess what I'm hearing you say is you're going to see what the market, how the market responds to your attempt to kind of push out and sell, and then what? Kind of pivot based on how the market responds to your...
It's really looking at how the market responds, but also we know that there is a market for this. And so it's more about finding which segment of the market that we should be focusing on at this point, and how do we effectively reach that portion of the market.
So it's about narrowing down, are you small, mid, enterprise? And
basically, yeah.
And really...
and it's an infrastructure tool, and you don't change infrastructure every day. Company in the mailing change infrastructure every couple of years or something. You have to sort of be creative and find ways to get your foot in the door without trying to just go for a whole hog migration. And so there can be like maybe certain features that we have that we can actually just go market that specific feature because that's something they can adopt right away, and then over time you can expand. So, like for example, we just got about a month ago we got a Series H company as a customer. So they could be a public company. They're that big, really well known. But it's just a 2-person team in a closet somewhere. It was like, this is what it seems like. No offense to those customers. We appreciate them.
Right.
I don't know actually what they're doing in the company, but it's a very small account.
Right.
But we have that.
Right.
We have that company as our customer, and we can expand over time.
Well, we'll see what the future holds, I guess, over the next year or so.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to you and your team, and thank you very much for being on the show. Any
Thank you.
Kind of last thoughts or whatever that you want to add on?
If you want to keep up with me, you can follow me on Twitter at Flybear, Flybayer.
Okay, cool.
And that's where I'm most active. And yeah, also like to say that no matter what you're doing, how hard it seems, whatever you're going through, keep pushing towards your dreams, and eventually I think you'll accomplish what you want to accomplish, even if it takes longer than you think.
Yeah, I appreciate that inspiration. We'll definitely we'll tag your Twitter account since that's where your kind of biggest following is, and appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Brad.